As I followed my nemesis, Baruka, from a distance in a mystery dimension, I couldn't help but marvel at this strange place I had unwittingly teleported to. It was unlike any world I had seen before. A shifting kaleidoscope full of dark, surreal imagery. Instead of a moon floating up in the sky, there was a shimmering, three-dimensional diamond, which looked like it was made of highly reflective, polished platinum, hovering just above the horizon. It rotated lazily, like a rotisserie chicken, looking like it was positioned much too close to the ground for astrophysics to allow. After climbing a steep, crumbling rocky slope, I got a good view of what lay ahead of me, surveying a wasteland which stretched off hellishly into the distance. It reminded me of a Salvador Dali image, if he had painted it during a bad acid trip. Purple thunder boomed, and toxic waste green lightning crashed far off in the distance, beyond jagged black mountains like teeth rising from the plains. In the fields in front of me, I saw long-legged creatures similar to spiders, with glowing red spots on their hindquarters. They looked like arachnid giraffes, their size dwarfing me in comparison. Their limbs were spindly and stretched out with too many joints, their bodies larger than elephants. They traced paths across the landscape in front of me, kicking up black dust which made me cough. In the sky, I saw winged creatures like bats, only much larger. They swooped down, drawing closer and closer as they came in to inspect me. I heard their huge snouts sniffing the air, and I shot a bolt of lightning at one of them, hoping to scare them off. Instead of the warning shot I intended, the blast of lightning hit the creature square in the belly, and it fell to the ground like a missile-struck jet, spinning and twirling in the air on the way down. Hearing its impact, I went down prone, and waited on the ground for a few minutes, hoping Baruka wouldn't look back at the noise and see me, or come back to inspect what had caused the sound. After a while, I stood up again, and saw she was still marching forward, down a long, twisted path leading towards the jagged mountains in the distance. The green lightning continued to flash ominously overhead as she moved steadily away. She had a good head start, and it would take me a while to catch up with her. I brushed the dirt from my clothing, then hurried along the path, my wand clenched tightly in my fist. Taking nervous glances toward the sky, I hoped none of the giant bats would attack me. They didn't seem to be bothering Baruka, but they were sniffing at me as if I were a T-bone steak. When I came over the next rise, I found myself in a desert, which was strange, since that wasn't what I had seen from my elevated view a few minutes prior. But I figured I'd just been seeing things. I had lost sight of Baruka, and she was nowhere to be found. I looked all around, trying to figure out where she could have gone, but I was unable to spot her. She must be just over that next set of sand dunes, I thought, looking at the hills rising up in front of me. There were no footprints, though, and that did strike me as a bit odd. Either way, I just kept trudging forward through the sand. It was so hot, every step a torturous effort, as I pulled my leg from the deep sand which pulled at my ankles and threatened to suck the shoes from my feet. My skin was baking under the heat. My throat was parched. Looking back over my shoulder, I couldn't believe how little ground I'd covered. It would take me an hour just to climb the dune in front of me, with the sand pulling at my feet and the treacherous slope threatening to send me tumbling back down at any moment if I lost my footing. After what seemed like hours of arduous marching, I finally reached the top of the sand dune, and looked out into the distance, expecting to see jagged mountains and Baruka tracing a path toward them. But instead, it was just empty desert as far as the eye could see. What the hell? I muttered, my lips dry and beginning to crack from a lack of moisture. The sand rose up all around me, blocking out my vision and stinging my eyes as a dust storm kicked up. When it settled back down again, I looked around to see the entire world was now desert, and the place I had come from no longer existed. it was just sand on all sides, and the baking sun blazing in the sky above. Although, I could have sworn that the sun looked like a shimmering metallic diamond when I got to this world. And it sure as hell wasn't a desert dimension, which I had experienced before. This place had looked completely different when I'd arrived, but now it was altering itself all around me. Something very strange was going on here. Something chaotic. And I had a feeling who might be responsible. Bruca was gone, and the entire world now looked different than when I arrived. I considered teleporting myself back home again, but reconsidered. There was a reason why she'd come here, and I got the feeling it was important. With nothing else to do but think things over, I sat down on the peak of the sand dune and considered my options. I twirled my magic wand through the grains of sand, doodling symbols and shapes. My mind wasn't focused at all. It was almost like I was meditating as I sat there cross-legged in the desert, letting my mind drift. When I looked down, I saw that I had somehow created an intricate mosaic pattern of complex drawings. They looked like runes or hieroglyphics, but I had no idea what they meant. Okay. That's a little weird. I had no memory of creating the drawings, since, apparently, I had done them while daydreaming with no conscious effort on my part. Suddenly, the sand started shaking underneath me, and I stood up, backing away as the ground began to split apart, as if being torn apart by the force of an earthquake. Beneath me, the earth rattled and shook, throwing me off balance and nearly sending me flying off the side of the sand dune. But I corrected myself at the last second, and managed to stay upright. The ground broke apart, the gap growing wider and wider as I watched, terrified. And then I heard a voice coming from deep beneath the sand, far, far below me. It was Bruca. You suck. You know that? I should have killed you when I had the chance. I thought for a second she was talking to me, but then heard a boy's voice respond. You never could have killed me. If anything, I should have killed you when I had the chance. A loud explosion could be heard down below, and I looked through a gap to see a pitched battle was being fought. Bruca was casting bolts of dark magic at someone, who I realized from a distance was probably the Chaos Kid. I couldn't remember his real name, just that stupid nickname Xavier had given him. The old sorcerer told me he was dangerous, maybe even more dangerous than Bruca. I guess she had decided to take him out next, before his power could get any stronger. Which was exactly what Xavier had suggested I do next. If the Dark Wizard and Xavier really were mortal enemies, they sure did seem to have a lot of the same thinking in common. It struck me for the first time how, if you go far enough in one direction with an ideology, you can bump up against the exact opposite ideology on the other side. Like communism and fascism, the middle ground seems to work out a lot better for everyone involved. I realized I was actually missing school for the first time, and couldn't believe it. But history class had always been fun, and I definitely wasn't learning about that stuff from Xavier. Maybe I just missed having a teacher who didn't nearly get me killed on multiple occasions. Still, the fate of the multiverse and all that jazz. The hell with it. Here we go, I said, regretting all of my life choices. I jumped down into the gaping hole at the top of the sand dune, and dug my magic wand into the sides like an ice axe, hoping to slow my descent. Grit and sand shot up into my face and stung my eyes. It didn't work at all. Sand is different from ice, I guess, since I just fell faster and faster, tumbling down into the pit while screaming at the top of my lungs. Luckily, the tunnel sloped gently at the bottom, bracing my fall, and I came sliding out of a hole in the wall of a dungeon-like space at approximately 150 miles per hour. My momentum carried me in a flying tumble into the Chaos Kid, who I sent crashing into a wall on the far side of the room. He hit his head on a rock and promptly fell asleep. His snores echoed loudly through the underground chamber a few seconds later. "You?" Veruca yelled at me, getting to her feet. "Again?" I saw her face was bruised, her clothing ripped and torn from her battle with the other apprentice. She looked like she'd been through hell. "How the hell did you, of all people, manage to knock out the Chaos Kid? How did you even get through the illusory field? There was a Class 4 entropy lock on the whole thing. It took me weeks to figure out how to get through his defenses." I stared at her dumbly. "You mean the sand? I just drew some pictures in it with my wand. Open right up." She growled, making a sound like a dog protecting its food bowl from an interloper. "Well, that figures. Of course you have chaos magic. You are the most unpredictable, random, irritating person I've ever met." She cast a bolt of dark energy at me from her wand, howling with rage as she did so. "Well, you're not going to be the one to kill him. I was just about to do that before you showed up." Veruca ducked behind a rock, moving closer to the Chaos Kid, and his wand, which lay on the floor next to his unconscious body. I countered by moving behind a rock on the other side of the cavern, edging my own way closer to the wand. We both wanted it badly. If Veruca got it, she'd have me outmatched in power 3-1 with her amalgamated wands. But if I got to it first, we would be evenly matched in our raw access to the All-World Tree and its multiverse magic. It would finally be a fair fight between the two of us, at least on paper. I shot a finger gun of lightning at her, then another, and another, racing towards the wand, which was on the floor. As I dove to grab it, Veruca opened up another portal, and I saw its counterpart appear right next to the Chaos Kid. She was gonna beat me to the wand if I didn't do something to stop her, and quickly. But as it turned out, I didn't have to. The Chaos Kid's eyes popped open, and a second later he was up on his feet, his twisted ebony wand clutched in his fist as we stood before him, both of us arriving at our target at the same time. He smirked, with an irritating and condescending look on his face, his eyes traveling up and down the length of me in a way I truly hated. It was the look of someone who knows they're better than you, without even a second of consideration. "A partner, Veruca? I thought you had more dignity than that. And this scruffy boy is your backup? He looks like he escaped from middle school." "Hey, I'm a freshman in high school. I shave," I responded, feeling my baby smooth face getting red with anger and embarrassment. "He's not my partner. He's not even my friend. Get out of here, loser. I was here first." Veruca shoved me. I stumbled backwards and felt hurt, both physically and socially. I don't know why I needed her to like me. I just did. It was like the more she hated me, the more I wanted her. Part of it was that I could tell she didn't actually hate me. The fact that she had spared my life so many times seemed to reinforce this belief, since killing people was kind of her thing. "Hey, I followed you here fair and square. Whoever kills him gets the wand and his powers. Those are the rules, remember? It's a Highlander sort of deal." The three of us squared off in a triangle. So, I guess we triangled off? But that doesn't sound as cool. The point is, the three of us stood ready for a battle to the death. And only one of us was gonna survive. My adventures as the Sorcerer's new apprentice had taken me to a distant and chaotic dimension, far away from Xavier, my mentor. Braving the strange lands to follow the girl of my dreams, and also my sworn enemy, I had almost died on several occasions, before finally discovering the entrance to the Chaos Kid's underground lair. And in the process, I discovered I possessed the mysterious and powerful force known as chaos magic, although I didn't entirely know what that meant. We were currently fighting in the cavernous underbelly of the Chaos World, where I had followed Veruca, thinking she was going to see her master. The Dark Wizard was the one pulling her strings, making her his puppet, and playing a wicked counterpoint to my own mentor, who was trying desperately to save the multiverse from destruction. Xavier didn't know I was here, but if he did, I had a feeling he would be proud of my bravery. I was doing everything in my power to stop the destruction of the multiverse. Meanwhile, all Baruka and the Dark Wizard wanted to do was destroy it all, turn it into a dark abyss. To start over, in the most nihilistic way possible. The Chaos Kid seemed to have a similar mindset, although he thought his goals were different and unique. If he destroyed everything, there would be chaos for sure, but chaos always leads back to order, and anarchy leads to the strongest and most powerful bullies getting their way all the time. That would be the New World Order, under Baruka and the Dark Wizard. Anyways, back to the matter at hand. I was currently in a face-off with 2 of the last 3 remaining apprentices. A Mexican standoff where the 3 of us were holding our wands out, ready to attack and kill one another at a moment's notice. My nemeses, Baruka and the Chaos Kid, had their hands gripped tightly around the hilts of their wands, and looked ready to attack. My own hand was trembling at the possibilities of what might happen next. My knees were wobbly and my mouth was dry, my senses more focused than they'd ever been. If I made one misstep, one false move, I would be dead. And no one would ever find my body. I winced and shielded my face with my hands, as a blast of dark energy erupted from Baruka's wand. The Chaos Kid unleashed a similar burst of red, malignant-looking energy from his own wand. His reminded me of Maximum Carnage from Spider-Man. A vine-like, gooey burst of red, melted Twizzlers. When the 2 forces came together, there was an outburst of power which sent me reeling backwards, crashing into the rock wall behind me. The 2 of them were unaffected by the blast, and continued battling in front of me, ignoring me where I lay bleeding on the ground. My head had hit the rock wall behind me, and I realized the world was fading into blackness, my vision filling with dark pixelations. Perfect, I thought to myself. This is just perfect. I'm gonna die down here, once they're done killing each other. And then everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in another place. It was bright and sunny, and there was green grass beneath my bare feet. Up ahead was a lake of crystal clear blue water, and there were people running and playing on its shore. Children dove from the dock and splashed each other in the water while swimming. But despite this happy scene, there was another one playing out a little ways away. And that scene was so strange that it drew my attention, and I found myself wandering over toward the group of people. A man and a woman were standing on a different dock, set aside from where the children played. The 2 of them were young, maybe in their 20s, and they were looking out at the water where someone was splashing around. Then I realized they weren't playing in the water. Whoever this was, they were drowning. But the man and woman didn't seem to care. I ran over to them, screaming, "Hey, she's drowning out there! Don't you see she's drowning?" Racing past the people on the dock, I was about to jump off from the end when I noticed something. The woman had her hand outstretched, and she was holding her palm down, as if from a distance pushing down on the girl's head, and forcing it underwater. She was using magic, I realized. And the man beside her, her husband probably, was just watching as she drowned that poor girl out in the water. Each time the young girl's head came up for a moment, I saw the terror on her face. Her black hair covered most of her visage, and I didn't notice her eyes right away. But then I caught a glimpse of them, and saw they were the same distinctive shade of purple possessed by only one girl I'd ever met. Baruka. I looked at the face of the man beside me, standing on the dock. Slowly, It all began to make sense. Xavier? I asked, looking at my mentor standing there, just watching his daughter drown. Xavier, help her! I screamed at him. I tried to grab his arm, to push him into the water, but I just went right through him like a ghost. What are you doing to her? Why are you doing this? I yelled again and again, but got no answer from either of them. Each time Bruca came up for air, she was more blue in the face, more wild-eyed and terrified. Finally, after what felt like forever, it stopped. The woman turned her hand over and raised her up out of the water with a simple gesture, causing her body to levitate upwards until she was hovering over the water, soaking wet and pouring liquid from her clothing. The woman was terrifying, whoever she was. I was scared just standing next to her, thinking that at any moment she might snap her gaze to look at me, despite the fact that they couldn't see me. She continued to ignore me, though, and looked at her daughter instead. Dear, I'm doing this for you. Now, I want you to tell me again. How do you transmogrify a cat and turn it into a frog? If you can't do it, then we'll just have to keep going. Bruca belched, and a half bucket full of water poured out from her mouth, as well as what looked like a small frog, coincidentally. Without skipping a beat, Bruca began to speak. You take a half pinch of witch hazel, 6 virgin tears, the phlegm of a goat, 2 dog whiskers, combine with 2 quarts of calf's blood, stir in a cauldron over an open flame on low heat for 2 hours until a paste is formed. Find a local cat. You forgot a step, sweetie. The horrible woman called out from across the water. You need to drain the mixture through a sieve first before proceeding any further. Bruca's face drained of any remaining color, and she began to scream in protest. No, I don't want to do this anymore. You can't keep... But her cries were cut off by the sound of water filling her lungs, as her own mother dunked her head beneath the waves again and again. And the only other sounds left were the wind and the distant cries of children playing in the water. I followed the family as they walked home, holding hands and talking amongst themselves, after several more torturous hours of this disturbing teaching method. Somewhere I'd heard that a study had been done, proving that traumatic events made lasting memories that could never be erased. The pieces fit together in my mind as they walked home and I listened to their conversation, and I realized all of this was normal in this world. It was a teaching method, a way to retain information through trauma. Wherever we were, it couldn't possibly be Earth. Could it? It definitely looked like Earth. I just wish I was normal like the other kids, Bruca said to her mom and dad as they walked. Why can't I play with them? Why can't I go to school with them? Her mother pulled her in with a hard yank on her arm. Because we are not like them, understand? We are different. You are different. You need to act like it. I ran ahead and looked at Xavier's face, not understanding how he could be so callous, so cruel to his own daughter. What the hell's wrong with you, Xavier? How could you do this to your own daughter? But he just continued looking straight through me. Eventually, we got inside their house, and Bruca went straight to her room. I followed her there and waited until she was alone before trying to speak to her. Despite the change in Xavier's age and appearance, Bruca looked about the same. Still a girl around my age. But I didn't understand how that was possible. She shut the door of her bedroom and sunk down on the floor, clutching her knees to her chest as she began to cry uncontrollably. I got down on the floor beside her and put my arm around her, despite the fact that it passed right through her like a ghost. It's okay, I said. Everything's gonna be okay. I'm sorry your parents are such assholes. My heart stopped in my chest when she spoke back to me. Thanks, she said. They are assholes, aren't they? I didn't know what to say at first. Then, after a few moments, I stuttered a reply. You can see me? Yeah, and I can hear you too. This is a memory, dummy. You're in my memories right now. Serious breach of privacy too, if I do say so myself. Oh, sorry. I guess you're right. This is all kind of personal. She sighed. It's okay. I'm kind of glad you're here. This is where it all comes from, I guess. My hatred for mankind, my desire for destruction, my nihilistic mentality. It all stems from this one stupid, unforgettable day, and a bunch of almost equally bad days before and after. That's pretty insightful of you to say that. If you know that, though, why don't you change? Why let this trauma take over your life? You're being exactly what she wants you to be. A horrible, heartless person. Xavier isn't like that anymore. She cut me off by grabbing my throat and squeezing it hard enough to cut off my air supply. Don't you say his name to me right now. He is not better than this. He is still the same piece of shit who did this to me all those years ago. I tried to squeak back a reply, but couldn't. And now, it's time for me to end it all. To get rid of everything, including him. I couldn't breathe, much less speak to argue with her. But after a few moments, she let go. Sorry, I rasped. You're right. I shouldn't defend him. I'm really pissed at him for watching that happen and not doing anything. This might actually be the end of our relationship. I don't know how I can learn from someone who can do that to his own daughter. I don't know if I can even be around him after seeing that. It was too much. I'm traumatized just seeing it. I can't imagine how you must feel. She softened her gaze and actually smiled at me. It had been a long time, but I hadn't forgotten it from that first day I'd seen her in the woods. Even if it had been a phony smile to steal Xavier's key from me, it had stuck with me. She had a beautiful smile. You mean that? You're not just saying it? Yeah, I do. Of course I do. Look, I care about you. Even if you do try to kill me every other time we meet. She looked at me for a long, long time, not saying anything. Her cheeks began to color with a blush, and she huffed. Really frustrating, you know that? What do you mean? Well, first I thought you were just another brat Xavier was going to train for a while and get tired of, or get killed. But you just keep sticking around. And she paused, something dawning on her. Her eyes widened further and further. What? I asked. Her face was getting redder, but this time, it wasn't a flirty blush. I realized she was pissed. You son of a bitch. You and your fucking emo magic. How could I let you do this to me? Emo magic? Oh, right. I forgot I had that. But I don't even know how to use it. I tried to protest. But then my eyes snapped open and I was back in the cavern again, looking on as Grupe sent a bolt of black lightning through the skull of the Chaos Kid, splitting him in half from top to bottom. His body split into two equal pieces that fell away as she strode through them, her boots squelching through the bloody puddles of viscera and gore. Without missing a stride, she reached down and picked up his wand, holding it up to her own. I watched in horror as her already large wand grew even bigger, until it was the size of a scepter, nearly as big as Xavier's staff now. She was more powerful than ever, way stronger than me now. You, she spit. The giant wand pointed straight at me. You don't make me feel things. Nobody makes me feel things. And with that, She shot a bolt of energy at me, clearly intending to kill me. I held up my own wand, yelling the first thing that came to mind, not really surprised to hear what it was. "Vines!" I shouted desperately. "Vines, vines, vines!" A moment later, I was rocketing out of the caverns through the ceiling above, propelled by a jack-and-the-beanstalk vine which grew rapidly toward the heavens, carrying me with it through tons of sheer stone. That's gonna leave a mark. I had time to think, before I lost consciousness once again. The last thing I noticed was my hands leaving the giant vine as it broke through the clouds, high up in the sky. And then, I was falling. As I lost consciousness, high up in the clouds in the chaos dimension, I began to fall. I had a brief, terrifying dream where I was jumping out of an airplane, with Grupe holding my hand. And then I came back to reality, just in time to see the ground racing up toward me from below. My wand was tumbling through the sky a little ways away, but all I could think of was the fact that I was falling, and I was gonna die. The huge vine I had summoned from the jungle world was racing past me as I continued to pick up speed. It reached up to the heavens from the caverns below ground, thicker than a California redwood, reminding me of the fabled beanstalk which Jack had climbed before he felled the giant. Remembering seeing skydivers on YouTube, I put my arms out at my sides and made my body into a backwards arch, trying to slow my descent as I plummeted towards the ground. It worked. But then my wand began to drop faster than I was, and I realized I needed it back. If I was going to survive, which I planned to, I needed it to stop Grupe. The universe was doomed if I didn't disrupt her plans. Instead of slowing my descent further, I made my body into the shape of a spear and dove downwards, racing through the air towards my wand. The ground below was getting sickeningly close, coming towards me faster and faster as I reached out my hand, attempting to grab the hilt of my trusty wand. I was beginning to suspect I'd miscalculated, that I would hit the ground long before I reached the damn thing, when my fingers brushed against it. Instead of grabbing it, I flicked it accidentally, sending it tumbling and spinning away through the air. I cursed in frustration. My heart jackhammering faster than I'd ever thought possible, bile rising up in my throat, I made one last desperate attempt to slice through the air and move toward it. I didn't dare look at the ground, knowing it was coming up at me far too fast, knowing that if I looked, it would distract me just long enough to die. Instead, I focused on the wand, this time grasping it tightly in my hand, not letting go. "Home!" I yelled as loud as I could, picturing Earth, picturing my hometown, picturing my parents. Nothing. The ground continued racing towards me, faster and faster and faster. With no time left to spare, I thought about Xavier. His stone-cold face as he watched his daughter being drowned. All so that he could teach her magic, to make her remember his lessons through trauma and pain. Xavier, I said, thinking of him bitterly. My mentor, who I had considered a father figure, or a great-great-great-great-grandfather figure, if you considered his age. But now, I just considered him an asshole. An abusive, narcissistic piece of shit, who needed to learn he couldn't treat people like that. And a second later, I was standing in front of him in his garage workshop. He was sitting at his desk, looking bored, sipping on a cup of coffee. His bushy eyebrows rose up in surprise when he saw me. "Ah, there you are. Where have you been, boy? It's about time you showed up. I am so sick of making my own coffee, even if it is far superior to that sludge you brew." I wanted to punch him in the mouth. I wanted to scream at him. But at that moment, I was so overwhelmed with emotions to be back home and alive, I couldn't do either one. I just sat down on the floor and hyperventilated for a little while. Breathing exercises. That's good. Fantastic way to channel the multiverse. You're going a bit quick, though. Try to slow it down. 5 seconds in, 10 seconds out. That's a little better. After I caught my breath, I rose shakily to my feet. You asshole! How could you do that to your own daughter? Careful now, boy, he said, standing up and looking angry. Remember who you're talking to. He suddenly appeared 10 times taller. The room darkened around us, and an ominous breeze began to blow through the previous still garage. I winced backwards involuntarily at his Gandalf-level intimidation skills. But then I steeled myself against him and continued. You drowned your own daughter? Just to get her to learn better? The wind began to settle, and light filled the room once more. Xavier shrank back down to his normal size, looking like a frail, sad old man once again. Oh, right. The emo magic, he said with a hint of distaste. I could never get the hang of that stuff myself. Nasty business going into someone else's mind, invading their memories. But if done right, well, it can heal a lot of hurt. Yeah, she needs some healing after what you did to her. You and your wife, I spat. No wonder she is the way she is. He sat back down, looking defeated. I was once under her spell, too. It's no excuse, I know. But that woman, Baruka's mother, was far more powerful than anyone in the multiverse. I couldn't stop her. And I couldn't resist her once she had in her mind to teach our daughter the ways of magic. She said that it was how she was taught. And her parents, and theirs before her. She said it was an ancient tradition, a religion, and I was ignorant to try to stop her. Well, you should have tried harder, I said. I saw you standing there, watching it all, watching her drown in that lake just so she'd remember a lesson. You didn't lift a finger. You're right, he sighed. I should have done more. If the multiverse is destroyed, I'll have only myself to blame. Don't you see, boy? That, among other reasons, is why I'm trying so hard to stop it all. To stop my daughter from destroying everything because of me. Tell me something. Where did this all happen? You didn't try to fight her by yourself, did you? Now it was my turn to look sheepish. The Chaos Dimension. I followed her there. I thought she was meeting the Dark Wizard and that maybe I could... You could do what? Speak up, boy. I thought maybe I could kill them both. He stared at me for a few long moments. Then he burst out laughing. You? Kill both of them? He continued laughing for a long, long time. Nearly 5 minutes, before finally wrapping up. Well, you survived at least. That's good. So, what happened? I told him how I'd followed Baruka through the Chaos world, how I'd gotten stranded in a desert and had drawn runes in the sand, allowing me to access the hidden chambers below ground. Whoa, hold on a second, boy. You did what? I drew in the sand, and then it opened up and I fell down into the Chaos Kid's secret lair. Baruka told me I have chaos magic, whatever that means. Xavier's bushy eyebrows rose up in his patented look of surprise. Only this time, his jaw dropped as well. Remarkable, he said, after a few long seconds. Chaos enchantments are some of the most complex and misunderstood of all the multiversal magical constructs. Only a few throughout my lifespan have been able to decode them effectively. I could never fully get the hang of it myself. This surprised me a lot. Xavier was the guardian of our entire universe. He protected the All-World Tree from destruction, keeping the multiverse in check. He was by far the most powerful being I had ever met. And yet, he was saying that I understood not one, but two facets of magic that he could not comprehend, despite his best efforts. He began to pace the room, looking deep in thought. You say you did all this by accident? What about getting into Bruca's memories? How did you figure out how to do that? I know I didn't teach you. Did I? My memory isn't what it used to be. Well, if you must know, I was knocked unconscious by an explosion. The back of my head hit a wall and... Ow! I yelped in pain as he came over to paw at the back of my head. Xavier, how am I able to do all this? I just have this little wand. I've barely been able to beat anyone, and I get screwed over constantly by Bruca and the Dark Wizard. You're acting like I have all this power, but I don't even know what I'm doing. My mentor let out a deep sigh. Perhaps that is my fault. Your training began much too late. If I had been doing my job, I would have found you sooner. I should have found you sooner. And then you would be doing what you were always meant to, instead of still being an apprentice. Thanks, I said, not fully comprehending his words. But then I paused and thought about it further. What do you mean, I could be what I was always meant to be? He opened his mouth to speak when the door crashed open with a loud bang. Smoke drifted in ominously, and then the sound of footsteps came from the hall. A moment later, Bruca stood in the doorway, her black hair blowing in that magical, non-existent breeze which Xavier had also conjured up to instill fear in me. Her eyes glowed purple with energy, and her electric stare filled the room with flickering light. The power she carried was palpable. The room was filled with a charge, like the air before a thunderstorm. And I noticed Bruca's wand was even larger than before. It was now the size of Xavier's staff, a gnarled and polished rod of ebony wood, nearly as tall as she was. How? I asked, in terrified awe of her. How did you get that staff? She just laughed and smiled, wider than I thought possible. That last apprentice was no match for me. I'm as powerful as Xavier now. As powerful as the Dark Wizard. There's only one more obstacle left, before I can take both of their power, too. Even Xavier was at a loss. He stood there staring at her, looking more afraid than I'd ever seen him. I challenge you. Tomorrow, in the Abyss Dimension, both of you can die there, in darkness and despair, just like the rest of the multiverse. With that, she disappeared, vanished in the blink of an eye. No portals, no spells, just gone. Oh dear, Xavier muttered once we'd had a few moments to recover. I had a bad feeling it might come to this. Come to what, Xavier? He looked at me with sorrow in his eyes, and began to conjure up a gateway to another world using his staff. Step inside, boy, he said. Your world is about to change now, and I'm afraid it won't be for the better. We stepped through that portal into another world. I saw a huge, towering pyramid stood before us, stretching up high into the sky. It was like a mountain which had been made by men. Blocks of polished black stone, which were larger than the freight containers of transport trucks, made up its bulk. How something like this could have been built, I had no idea. But then, the method occurred to me in an instant. Magic. Xavier led me to an ornate doorway, its surface covered in glowing runes and emblems with complex and intricate formations. He touched them with his hand and began to speak in a low, murmuring song. After several long minutes of this hauntingly beautiful melody, the door opened. It revealed a dark passageway with a very high ceiling, leading on into blackness. Xavier snapped his fingers together and torches lit up, 2 by 2, along either side of the wall, like dominoes of light leading us into the tunnel. "What is this place?" I asked Xavier, awestruck. He sighed and began to speak, but he did not answer my question. "You have been chosen, boy. The multiverse does this every so often. Once every millennium, although it can be far more frequent." "Chosen for what?" He stopped walking and turned to look at me. Bending down, he looked into my eyes with as much sincerity as I'd ever seen. Whatever he was about to say, it was important. "You are the one." He let that sink in for a few moments. Then he stood up and started walking away again, heading down the long passageway. "What? What kind of Matrix bullshit is that, Xavier? The One? You know how played out that is, right? That's the freaking plot of every single fantasy story. Seriously? The One?" "There is a reason why it is such a popular trope. The concept of the One has existed throughout every dimension and every time since the beginning of it all. The very first story ever written was a recounting of the journey of Fox, a young girl who would eventually save the multiverse. She was the first recorded One, but there have been many throughout the countless millennia since her." "Okay, fine. So I'm the One. I'll buy it. What does that mean, though? And you still haven't answered why we're here." He led me into an open chamber, and I saw that it was the hollow center of the Great Pyramid we were in. Once we were through the doorway, the walls of the corridor disappeared, and there was only a narrow stretch of floor leading towards the center of this massive chamber. On both sides of us, there was only blackness, and if you stepped off the edge accidentally, you would fall forever into darkness. And I had a feeling you would never, ever hit the bottom. Up ahead, there was a light source, glowing a faint blue color, and there was a silhouette of what looked like a person inside. As we got closer, I saw that it was a woman, and she was alive. It appeared as if she was encased in ice, but it allowed her to stay conscious within it. The blue ice swirled and moved, as if alive with magic. "Who is that?" I asked, afraid that I already knew the answer. Once again, my mentor answered a different question instead, one that I forgot I'd asked. "The One is the being who is called upon to save the multiverse from destruction. When the Guardian of the All-World Tree fails in his duties, and all other avenues have been exhausted, they must..." He trailed off, looking at his feet. "They must what? What do I have to do, Xavier? I'll do anything." "They must become one with all magic. Chaos magic, emotional magic, and what I like to call classical magic, which is what I've been teaching you all along. How to channel the multiverse, that's classical magic. It's what all of us learned from our earliest days. But there's another form of magic too. One that you will need to know if you are to stop Grupe. Unfortunately, if you are truly the One, it is the only way." "And what kind of magic is that? What does it have to do with her?" I asked, gesturing up to the woman in the block of ice, looking at us with a growing smile. "Who is she anyway?" "That," Xavier said, "is Grupe's mother. And I'm sad to say that she is not dead, like I always told her that she was. She's very much alive. Why are we here, Xavier? What is this place? I asked, knowing the answer already. This is a prison for the most dangerous woman in the history of the multiverse. And we are about to set her free. Prepare to meet your new teacher, boy. Xavier was murmuring an incantation, and I looked up in horror at the woman encased in magic ice, who he was about to release back into the multiverse. She was the most powerful being in existence, according to my mentor, and I'd personally witnessed her do some pretty unforgivable things when I was teleported back in time through Bruca's memories. I thought again about how twisted this whole situation was. My mentor Xavier was the guardian of the All-World Tree, keeper of the multiverse. He was training me to be his replacement. Meanwhile, his own daughter, Bruca, was trying to destroy everything and turn all of existence into a dark void, hoping to start over. On top of all that, I'd recently found out that Bruca had been set on this twisted path due to an abusive childhood that had scarred her and traumatized her, making her want to destroy everything, since it was all so obviously terrible, for her at least. And who could even blame her for thinking that way? Her abusive parents were, of course, my mentor Xavier, and this dark sorceress who he was now trying to set free, even though he had presumably been the one who trapped her here. And I'm assuming he did that for a very good reason. My head was spinning as I tried to make sense of it all. Xavier, stop! I ran over to him and pulled him back from what he was doing. We need to talk about this. He turned around and scrunched up his face in irritation, and I noticed the woman encased in the magic ice made an almost identical face, looking annoyed with my interruption. We don't have time for this, boy. Bruca is killing the Dark Wizard as we speak. And do you know what happens after that? She kills me and you. Not in that order, of course. And then everyone else. Everyone is gonna die. Don't you see? This is the only way. The only way. He pushed me away from him with anger, and I fell to the floor, bruising my backside. Not only that, I almost fell right off the edge of the floating platform we were standing on, nearly tumbling off the side and into the never-ending darkness. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt queasy and sick, thinking about how I just died, and my mentor hadn't even noticed. This wasn't like him. This wasn't Xavier. This was someone else entirely. And I didn't like him. But I also couldn't fight him. I wasn't strong enough. I couldn't help it. I curled up my knees in front of me and sat on the cold stone floor, crying. And I watched as he slowly unlocked the shields, keeping the dark sorceress imprisoned. After several long hours, it seemed that Xavier was very close to finishing what he was doing. I could sense the power of the magical ice dissipating, and I could see the woman inside beginning to look more and more excited with anticipation at getting out. Rivera, I am about to do something I never, ever thought I would do, Xavier said slowly, and I was surprised to hear him say the words out loud. I had thought he was in a trance, deeply hypnotized by the woman and being forced to let her out. But this was his own voice, and I realized it was him all along. I'm about to let you out. Not because I want to, but because I need your help. We need your help. She watched his face closely, listening to his words. This boy is the one. He has been chosen by the All-World Tree to stop the unmaking of reality. Only one thing is missing from his training. One thing that I cannot teach him. Xavier turned to face me. You learned so much on your own, boy. I've been a terrible teacher. But you cannot learn dark magic on your own. It must be taught. And it must be taught by a master. Rivera is that master. She wanted Bruca to be the chosen one, to defend the All-World Tree when we were gone. That is why she learned dark magic, so that Bruca could benefit from her wisdom and become the one true protector, the everlasting guardian foretold in the prophecies. He turned to look back at her. But Bruca was corrupted by dark magic, and it turned her. Unless you are the one, you will always be turned by it if you study too deeply, invest too much of your time and soul into learning its ways. So how can we trust her? I asked. If she's truly corrupted? He looked at me solemnly. We can't. We can't trust her as far as we can throw her. Xavier shook his head, and I saw a look of confusion fall over Rivera's face. That's why I brought this. Xavier removed something from the pockets of his long robes, and I saw that it looked familiar. It was a black collar with a silver buckle, like one you would attach to your pet, like one that a dog would wear. Holy shit! That's from the goat dimension, that place where I was trapped. How'd you get that? I visited there after you returned. They sounded like a bunch of dicks. I wanted to teach them all a lesson. I made sure they won't be enslaving people anymore, forcing them to sit in glass boxes, to produce sweat for hyponatremic goats. I'll be honest, it sounded a bit convoluted, I said. There's gotta be a better way to get salt. There is. I left them a few books on the subject, but they weren't exactly pleased about being told to abandon their current religion and overall way of life. Still, I wasn't going to leave it up for debate. The woman in the ice looked very confused. Oh, sorry, Xavier said. Multiverse shenanigans. She nodded, as if this explained everything. You will put this on, Rivera, or I will restore the shields, and you will stay there for the rest of eternity. Which will be short, at least. He put the collar into the ice, and she grabbed it. After examining it for a few moments, she fixed us both with a terrifying stare, and then put it on. Happy? She asked, although her words were muffled and mostly inaudible. Very, Xavier said, and snapped his fingers. The entire ice prison suddenly turned into water, splashing to the floor and soaking us both. It almost sent me tumbling off the edge of the floor into the black abyss once again, but I managed to stop myself, using my wand like an ice pick as I was washed off my feet and sent flying towards the edge. I stood up, feeling very angry and very wet. A little warning next time, Xavier? Yes. I kind of forgot I was going to do that, if I'm being honest. The woman before us was soaking wet, getting to her feet from the stone floor. Her eyes fixed us with an angry stare, and I saw they were violet, just like her daughter's. So, are you going to try to kill me now? Xavier asked. Because if you are, I'd really prefer if we could just get it over with now. He closed his eyes as if waiting to die. His arm stretched out to his sides as if he were giving himself up to her. I'm not going to kill you, she said, then fixed her gaze on me. I stumbled backwards involuntarily and nearly plunged to my death for the third time. She grabbed my shirt as I began to fall into the abyss, pulling me back up. I realized Xavier hadn't been paying attention and still had his eyes closed, standing in his brave martyr pose, and I would have died if she hadn't intervened. Thanks, I managed to squeak out. You really need to pay better attention to your apprentices, Xavier, Rivera said, snapping her fingers to get his attention. His eyes opened, and for a second I wondered if he'd been asleep. He once told me that sorcerers slept very little, only seconds at a time, sneaking those moments in at any opportunity, mostly when other people were talking. What's that now? He asked with confusion in his eyes, and she muttered something that sounded like a foreign curse word back at him. Come on, let's get moving, she said. It's always up to me. Every single time. The three of us stood in the Abyss dimension, after Rivera insisted we teleport there. She said she wanted to see her daughter's progress. After a few moments of surveying the dark wasteland, she let out a soft chuckle. What could possibly be funny about this? Xavier asked. Is the undoing of all reality a joke to you? Did those millennia and the magic ice do something to your brain? She always did love those cats, Rivera said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Maybe that's the key. Finally, I saw what she found so amusing. A single black cat with a white spot on its throat was floating through the air toward us, doing lazy barrel rolls as it did so. It let out a soft meow as it collided with my chest, and I took it in my arms, giving it a few quick head scratches. Yes, we're not entirely sure how she managed to destroy everything except the cats. A pellet of kibble hit him in the eye, and he brushed it away. And the, cat food. There seems to be a never-ending supply coming from somewhere. Rivera took the cat from me and inspected it, holding it up in front of her face as the poor thing stared at her, back legs dangling in the air. It let out another meow, as if introducing itself to her. Oh, a pleasure to meet you, Belvedere. I'm Rivera, the Dark Sorceress. May I ask, if it's not too much trouble, do you know where your kibble comes from? She asked the cat in a polite tone. The cat let out another meow. Well, it is important, actually. I can't really go into too much detail. The cat began to chatter and purr in a mixture of sounds. It reminded me of how squirrels call back and forth to each other from the trees to alert each other of predators. There was clearly some language involved that I didn't understand. She's loyal, I'll give her that, Xavier said, looking at the cat with disdain. Yes, but you know how cats are. Fickle, said Rivera. True. Rivera looked down at the collar on her neck. Little help, Xavier? Oh, of course. With a flourish of his hands, Xavier produced a churro meat stick, the most treasured of all cat treats. Kind of like a Go-Gurt filled with liquid meat. He handed it to Rivera, and she ripped open the top, holding it up to the cat's face to get a whiff. The cat looked hypnotized by the meat stick, her eyes going back and forth as the dark sorceress waved it in front of her face. The cat went in for a bite, but then Rivera pulled it back at the last second. She fanned out a dozen churro meat sticks in front of the cat's face, like a magician doing a card trick. Tell us where the kibble comes from, and you get them all. After a few seconds of deliberation, the cat conceded and gave a small nod, speaking a few sentences in cat talk. Perfect. Thank you. You have done the multiverse a service today, Fuzzy One. Your words will not be forgotten. The three of us moved on from there, and Rivera began to speak again to Xavier, giving him some coordinates. She was loyal, but I could tell that even she knew something was off with Bruca. That cat is putting on a brave show, but deep down, she's scared. She must know something is wrong. Xavier nodded, creating a portal in the air with his staff. Brace yourselves, he said. Whatever is on the other side of this portal, it is powerful enough to create matter, and that is no small feat. I remembered something from science class. One of my favorites before my unintentional abandonment of high school. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. It was a fundamental law, I was pretty sure. The conservation of mass, maybe? But I thought everything comes from somewhere else, I said to Xavier. When we use magic, are we just bringing things over to our universe from another one? Yes, but whoever is doing this doesn't seem to care about those things. Whoever is doing this is beyond those fundamental laws of science. I've never seen anything like it. That's what's so strange about the kibble. I just never noticed it before. It took Rivera to see what I could not. Whatever is doing this, they are outside of the multiverse, Rivera said. They are somewhere different. The magic on the kibble, the construction of the atoms, everything about it says it was not created here. The portal swirled in the air before us, looking strange, and unlike anything I had seen before. Then suddenly it changed, turning a bright violet shade. They're letting us through, Xavier said. But there's no guarantee we'll be able to come back. It doesn't matter. This is the only way, Rivera said. We must find out who is on the other side of this gateway. They are the key to all of this. The three of us stepped through the swirling portal to the other side. A cold feeling washed over me. Then I became uncomfortably hot, before feeling somewhat normal again. I realized I had closed my eyes and opened them again, looking up to see the most beautiful and strange place I had ever seen. It was like we were on a floating space station, only made of energy. The place reminded me of Rainbow Road from Mario Kart, a colorful place existing impossibly amidst the stars. A violet castle stood ahead of us, its walls tall and imposing. Out in the distance, in the sky, we could see new galaxies being created before our eyes. New planets sprung to existence right in front of us, the closest one looking very much like Earth. No, it can't be, Xavier said aloud. It's not possible. Rivera began to laugh, the sound like a wicked lullaby. She did it, the dark sorceress laughed, reaching up to rip the collar from her neck with ease. I really can't believe how stupid you are, Xavier. You never learn, do you? Never trust someone with violet eyes. I told you all along. We would be the ones to create the new multiverse. And we would be the ones to bring about the destruction of the old one. A portal appeared behind her, and without even looking at it, she stepped back into it, and it sealed closed behind her. Her laughter was gone a second later, as if echoing in the air around us. After that, it was silent. Until Xavier began to cry. We are so fucked, he said softly. Xavier and I were left alone on the rainbow-colored space platform, gazing around in awe and horrified wonder as we took in the new multiverse all around us. After several long moments, I began to understand what we'd done. We had unwittingly entered this place, and now we were trapped here. Our magic no longer functioned in this new multiverse. This place was governed by different laws. Her laws. Bruke had accomplished what she was planning, at least in some version of our reality. There were infinite iterations of her, all attempting the same thing, or some variation of it. They all wanted to tear down the multiverse and start things over again. The ultimate version of nihilism. She believed our reality was worthless and should be purged from existence. And she had somehow succeeded, making this new place which existed separate from everything else. The only thing standing between her and the fruition of her full plan was the existence of our reality, the multiverse that Xavier and I were tasked with protecting. And now, we were trapped here, in this place where we were powerless. I just imagined Baruka laughing at us, mocking us for our stupidity in coming here. Let's go, Xavier said, pointing toward a large pair of double doors which went into the castle. We might as well get this over with and talk to her. She's running the show here. I sighed and took a step forward. The moment I did, we were teleported instantly to a throne room, a magnificent hall, far larger and more ornate than anything I'd ever seen in my life. It put Buckingham Palace and the Taj Mahal to shame. And sitting on an enormous throne in front of us was Bruca. Her eyes were as violet as ever, but they were glowing now with a power that shone outwards and hurt my eyes to look at. Her entire body was illuminated with that power, but the brightest of it was in her gaze, which was directed straight at me. Rivera hovered in the air to her left, looking discontent with standing. Instead, she wanted to seem intimidating, I guess. And she definitely was scary looking, with that same violet energy running hot in her hands, glowing and pulsing with power. She smiled repulsively at us, and I realized that I truly hated this woman. She had hurt her daughter when she was a child, made her evil, and had turned her into what she was. She was using her for her own purposes, to increase her power and make her into a god in this place. Or so she thought. "Bruca, darling," she purred, looking down at her daughter. "Why don't you finally give these two exactly what they deserve?" The Bruca in this multiverse did not say anything. Instead, she simply raised her left hand into the air, then closed her fist tightly. As soon as she did that, Rivera fell from where she was hovering, nearly 20 feet in the air, and crashed into the ground with so much force that it rattled the floor beneath my feet. The sorceress was badly injured, looking as if she had lost all her powers in an instant. Blood poured from a wound in her leg, a splintered bone sticking out at an angle. Purple energy flickered and sparked around her hands as she tried desperately to attack her daughter with magic, but nothing happened. "You little bitch," she spat, crawling toward Bruca on her belly. "I made you what you are." Bruca stood, and a blast of energy rippled outwards, turning her mother into a pile of ash. The soot, which had previously been the most dangerous being in the multiverse, drifted away on an unseen wind, and was gone forever. "Exactly," she said. "You did this to yourself." Xavier and I backed away, looking at this horrifying, powerful woman in front of us. She was not a teenager anymore. Not by a long stretch. She looked older now, as if she had aged 1,000,000,000,000 years. But not in the lines of her face, more in her gaze as she looked at us. That gaze was almost too much to look into, but I managed to meet her eyes and look back at her, feeling my retinas burning. "Just do it already," I said, resigned to my fate. "I'm not sorry that I tried, though. I'll never regret getting to know you, even if it was just because you kept trying to kill me and destroy the universe." There was a long silence before she spoke again. Finally, she did. "If I wanted to destroy your reality, I would have done it already. With a snap of my fingers, you'd be gone. So why haven't you?" Bruca sighed, looking off into the galaxies she was creating with no effort at all. "I've had a long time to think here. A long, long, long time. To put it into perspective, I've lived here for 100 times longer than your planet has existed. I've seen worlds like yours come and go, destroyed by supernovas and asteroid impacts. Entire civilizations wiped out in the blink of an eye. I've never been able to go through with it. I've never been able to destroy the place I once called home. Why not?" She looked long and hard into my eyes. "Isn't it obvious by now? Because of you, Jordan." I was stunned speechless. I tried to say something, but it only came out as a choked whimper. In every version of reality, you are the only thing that keeps me from wanting to do the unthinkable. You remind me of what's worth keeping. cats and forests and friendships and love. Really? I mean, does she really? She cleared her throat in an awkward way. Well, in every version of reality except... My jaw dropped. So you're saying, in every version of reality except for mine, Bruca falls in love with me and stops her attempts to destroy the multiverse? Xavier patted my back, and I jumped, having slightly forgotten he was there. It's okay, boy. She really is a tough audience. You should see how she stonewalls my dad jokes. It's not entirely your... Bruca snapped her fingers, and Xavier was encapsulated in a purple cone of silence. He banged his fists against it, but I couldn't hear a sound on the other side. He really was a terrible father, she said. Not as bad a parent as Rivera, but still just awful. Yeah, sorry about that. People are assholes sometimes. Tell me about it. So, why'd you bring me here anyways? Just to tell me that I'm failing my attempts at courtship on a multiverse-destroying scale? Because I'm already under enough pressure here. She shook her head, softening her gaze. Specifically the wattage, which was helpful because it was burning the shit out of my retinas up close. You're doing everything right. Rivera just did a real number on her. Which is part of the reason why I brought you all here. To get rid of that bitch and tell you to stay strong. You can still stop her from destroying everything. In fact, you're the only one who can stop her. You just have to keep reminding her of everything that's worth saving in your world. But you need to hurry. It's almost too late. Just as I was about to ask her what she had invested in all this, I saw a cat snuggle up against her leg. It looked up at me expectantly, as if waiting to see if I would give it treats. The Abyss Dimension, I started, as everything began to come together. You're the one who's been feeding the cats in the Abyss Dimension, and you've been bringing them here. She sighed. Yes, it's true. The one thing they don't tell you about making your own multiverse is that it's really hard to make cats. I don't know how the creator of your multiverse did it, to be honest. These little guys have so many quirks and personality deficiencies that they're nearly impossible to replicate. Enigmas wrapped inside enigmas wrapped inside enigmas. And I really missed having them around, so I've been sort of borrowing them from your multiverse. But if she destroys it, then these guys will disappear. A paradox like that can't exist. Not even in a place of my own design. I've run a quintillion simulations, and every time it ends up the same. If your Bruca blows it all up, these little guys are gone for good. It'll be like they never existed. I looked over at Xavier, banging on the force field of silence. He looked like he was getting tired. Or sleepy. Is he gonna, run out of air in there? I asked, somewhat concerned. Probably not. Anyways, we're almost done here. Just listen to me and take my advice on this. Don't give up on her. Because you'll get through to her eventually. At least, I'm pretty sure you will. Okay, good luck. And with that, a portal opened up behind me, and I was sucked backwards into it. Xavier followed afterwards, and landed on me painfully on the other side. When I looked around, I saw we were back in his workshop. The good news was, we had our powers back. What did she say, boy? He yelled at me, grabbing me roughly by my shirt. You must tell me everything. Well, Xavier, I started. The good news is, there's still a chance of saving the multiverse. I see. Well, that is good news. And I presume there's bad news as well? Yeah, about that. The bad news is, the fate of reality rests in my hands. I have to convince your daughter that she has feelings for me. He plunked himself down on a chair and put his face in his hands. Just as I suspected. All hope is lost. Xavier and I had finally come up with a plan. It was far-fetched and almost hopeless, but it was a plan all the same. Bruca said she wanted to fight me in the Abyss dimension, and that was fine by me. It didn't really matter where all this went down, and at least that place was sort of neutral territory. Hold still, boy. I need to get this stray hair to lay flat. The old sorcerer spit on the comb and ran it through my hair again, as I grimaced and groaned. This was even worse than magic training. Who would have thought things would come to this? Alright, that's about as good as it's gonna get. Do you have a speech prepared? Or are you just gonna open with the gift? I don't know. I kinda thought I'd just wing it. The fate of the multiverse is in his hands, and he wants to just wing it. Xavier muttered under his breath, walking away from me to grab his staff. Any final words? He asked, getting ready to open the portal. It sounded like he was resigned to our demise, but I tried to ignore that fact. I holstered my magic wand and walked over to the old man, then embraced him in a bear hug. Thank you for everything, Xavier. For everything you taught me. Thank you. He squirmed and complained for a few moments, but then eventually relented and hugged me back. I suppose you've been an adequate apprentice for the most part, he said, and I noticed tears in his eyes, which he quickly wiped away. But you won't be an apprentice for much longer at this rate. I released him from the hug and took a step back, and he must have seen the disappointment on my face, because he smiled. Anyone who saves the multiverse from annihilation, such a person could never be considered an apprentice. Such an act would make you a master, far surpassing even my own skills and abilities. It took me a few moments to realize what he was saying. Xavier, do you mean if we succeed, then you're gonna retire? He didn't respond. We'll have to talk about it later. Once you've done what you set out to accomplish. You're already a master in my eyes, Jordan. I'm sorry I gave you such a hard time for so many months. Now it was my turn to get teary-eyed. You've been the best teacher an apprentice could ask for, I said, wiping my eyes with my sleeve. Now let's go save the fucking multiverse. He nodded and began to twirl his staff in the air in front of him, creating a portal. Without another word, I stepped through. It didn't take long to spot Bruca in the Abyss dimension. She was hovering in the air, pulsing with power and energy like a younger version of her counterpart, the one who had created the other multiverse. I wondered if she was even aware of that place's existence, or if she would believe me if I told her. Xavier was staying back on the other side of the portal, and I looked back to see him watching me for a lingering moment, before letting the rift close again. It was all up to me now. Bruca didn't even open her eyes as I approached her, and when I finally got up close, she spoke, still not looking at me. You came alone. Good. I didn't say anything. I wanted her to look at me first. I hope you came prepared to fight. And to die. Still, I stayed silent. It wasn't lost on me that she was still keeping her eyes closed, feigning meditation, and I took that for a good sign. Cat got your tongue? She mocked. The silence hung in the air between us. And finally, after what felt like 1,000,000 years, she looked up at me and met my gaze. Those violet eyes were still the same beautiful shade as before, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't help myself around this girl. But at the same time, I understood completely. It was like we were destined to be together. The other version of her in the other multiverse had basically said the same thing. It seemed like she read my mind, because for a moment her gaze faltered, and she glanced away. I thought I could detect the slightest hint of a blush on her cheeks, but just barely. She was probably using magic to conceal it, I realized, as it quickly faded when she caught me looking at it. "What are you looking at me like that for?" she demanded. "Why are you smiling? Don't you know you're gonna die right now?" "I don't think so, Bruca," I said, without a hint of menace. "I don't think you are gonna kill me, because I think you're in love with me, just like I'm in love with you." I took out my wand, and she brought up her staff for a moment, looking ready to defend herself. But then I tossed the wand over to her. My wand. The one I had worked so hard to enhance and to master. It hurt. I'm not gonna lie. It really fucking hurt to give that thing to her. But at the same time, I knew it was the right thing to do. It just felt right. And when she held it in her hands, she looked at me with complete and utter confusion. The wand I'd given her had a rose curled around its hilt and up the shaft, which I'd complained about to Xavier, asking him to remove it. He never had, and maybe he wasn't even capable of altering it in such a way. It was a unique item, filled with my essence and tied to my very being. But more than that, it was the most selfless gift anyone had ever given Bruca. In fact, it was the only gift anyone had ever given Bruca. Xavier had told me this, admitting he had been an extremely shitty father. She looked at it, and then at me. I waited to see if she would let out an evil cackle and combine the wand with her staff, destroying me in an instant. But she didn't do that. "Why? Why would you give this to me?" she demanded, and actually threw it back at me. "Hold up your weapon. Fight me like a man." But she didn't look angry. She looked confused and shaken, as if this were all some big trick. "This isn't a trick," I said, tossing it back to her. "You win. Combine it with your big staff and kill us all already. That's what you always dreamed of, right? Isn't that your big plan?" She stuttered something, then looked down at her feet, then at the wand and the staff in her hands. "Your mother is dead, Bruca," I said. "I thought you should know that." She looked up at me, suddenly furious. "What?" Crossing the space between us in an instant, she was suddenly right in front of my face. So close I could smell the berry lip gloss, or whatever it was which she had first used to enchant me. What felt like so many lifetimes ago. "You killed her?" She held the staff up to my neck, and I felt its power glowing hot, burning my skin. "She was supposed to die by my hand." "No. I didn't kill her. You did. In the other multiverse." This made her take a step backwards. "I could never kill that woman. You know that. She was the deadliest being in the multiverse. Xavier let her out, hoping she would teach me how to use dark magic. But instead she turned on us, and a portal opened up, and we were in this other place where our powers didn't work anymore. It was a new multiverse. And there was another you. She killed your Rivera. She killed your mother." It worked," Bruca muttered. I did it. Well, she did it, but that means it's possible." I had a cat treat in my hands, which I was hiding behind my back. I tore the wrapper open at that moment, and the scent of churro meat stick filled the nearby air in the abyss dimension. A moment later, there was a kitty in my arms, licking the liquid meat juices from the wrapper. What are you doing? Bruca asked. Why are you doing that? Stop it. Put that cat down right now and fight me. You're the last apprentice I have to defeat, and then... And then what? He destroyed the multiverse? Start over? You were only doing all this because of her. And now she's dead. Look, I get that she was a shitty mother and Xavier's a terrible father. But there are things that are good in this multiverse. Things that you can't recreate in that other place. The version of you who killed Rivera told me she's been around for 100 times as long as our planet. And even she couldn't recreate these little guys. She said she's been borrowing them from here. And as soon as you succeed in destroying our reality, they'll be gone. For good. I tossed her a meat stick. Think about that for just a minute. No more kitties. The version of you who's been around for infinity years says she would pretty much die of boredom without these guys. And I know you love them too. You really want to wipe them all out? Kitty genocide on an intergalactic, multi-dimensional scale? You really want that on your conscience? She thought about this for a few long moments. And if you were gone, I said hesitantly, I would really miss our fights. You trying to kill me all the time? It's been the highlight of my life up until now. That day we met in the forest, I wouldn't take it back for anything. She looked at me differently than before, that blush creeping back. You're too young for me. Didn't Xavier tell you how old I am? Age is just a number. I'm an old soul. Besides, according to that other version of you, we get together in every single version of reality. Except for this one so far. So, I guess I wasn't too young for those other versions of you. Oh, just shut up and kiss me already, you idiot. I did as she requested. The two cats in our arms between us, looking confused but satisfied, as they finished off the remaining morsels of cat treats, licking their chops afterwards. We had approximately 10 seconds of sheer bliss in those moments. And as suddenly as it had started, it was over in an instant. Well, isn't this a sight to see? A dry, rattling voice said. Bruca reached down quickly, sensing what was happening much faster than me. But it was already too late. I looked down at my feet as Bruca's staff and my wand flew away from us, winding up in the grasp of the dark wizard. The horrifying, shadow-faced man who had taken Bruca under his wing, causing her to go down this dark path. You really disappoint me, child. But, on the other hand, I do have what I need now. I have everything I need to destroy this reality and to create my own multiverse. He held the wand and the staff up against his own and created a huge, twisting, branch-like staff, twice as large as Xavier's. The power emanating from it was palpable, thrumming like a downed power cable in the street. The dark wizard held it up to the sky and began to laugh, reveling in his new power. Now I will complete what you were too weak to finish. But first, the two of you can die. He pointed the staff at us, and a bolt of black lightning came streaking toward us. And we would have been dead if not for Xavier. He was eavesdropping, I guess, but must have dozed off when the dark wizard showed up. Still, he was here now, when it mattered. My mentor cast a force field around us, encapsulating us in glowing energy, which nearly cracked and buckled under the impact of the lightning bolt. But it managed to hold up, just barely. The two of us breathed a sigh of relief, and I was surprised to see that we were now holding hands, although I didn't remember grabbing Bruca's. I was glad I had. You will not defeat us, Azrael, the old sorcerer bellowed, holding up his staff. Good will always prevail over evil. Light will always triumph over darkness. The just will... He was cut off as a bolt of energy hit him, sending him flying backwards, nearly tumbling off the ledge and into the dark abyss. I was surprised to see several dozen cats appear from nearby and pulled him back onto solid ground. Then most of them disappeared into the shadows. But two larger cats, tomcats by the look of them, picked up pieces of Xavier's broken staff, which had shattered in the explosion. Floating over to us on the lack of gravity, they presented us with the pieces of the all-world tree. Grupe picked up one, and I grabbed the other. They formed into two large wands, nearly as long as my arm, but still not nearly the size of the Dark Wizard staff. He saw this and chuckled at us, as if our attempts to survive were the funniest thing in the world to him. You really think the two of you can defeat me? I am 10 times wiser, twice as powerful, if not more. Very well. Let's see you try. The cats scattered in every direction as the two of us charged the Dark Wizard, ready for the fight to potentially end all things. Love is a funny thing. It can feel like infatuation at first, but over time it develops and grows, turns into something stronger. And without love, we feel hopeless. Without love, we feel empty and sad, as if our lives have no meaning. But when you find true love, it's like a life preserver, thrown to you in a violent sea, saving you, as you would have drowned in despair and loneliness without it. A lighthouse, with a bright beacon shining in the darkness, showing us the way through the raging ocean and into the safety of the harbor. Love is a funny thing, but it is also a powerful thing. A thing full of magic and whimsy and so much light that it can blind people who are not used to seeing it. What in the fuck? The Dark Wizard screamed, as the glowing energy of my wand and Bruca's combined, increasing in brightness until it was as white-hot as a welder's torch. I realized we were holding hands, and I never wanted to let go. The Dark Wizard reeled backwards and cast a black shield around himself, using his staff. The light began to penetrate it slowly, causing it to become translucent. He looked uncomfortable inside, as if the bright light were burning his eyes. How are we doing this? I whispered to Bruca. I don't know. Let's keep it up. I think we're beating him. We just need to... Suddenly, a bolt of dark energy shot out from the wizard's staff, landing between us and sending us flying in opposite directions. I nearly tumbled off the ledge of the platform where I landed, but several cats quickly grabbed me by the robe and lifted me back up onto solid ground. Bruca! I yelled, seeing her lying on the edge of another floating platform, face down. She looked to be unconscious, and blood was trickling out from her left ear. The Dark Wizard cackled laughter and began to twirl his staff in front of him. As he did, gray clouds rolled in from all around, booming thunder and raining on us heavily. A moment after the rain began, it became hail. First the size of small pebbles, then the size of golf balls. They grew larger and larger and began pelting me, hitting me in the chest and in the face, on my shoulders and arms. Each strike was so painful it stunned me, breaking me from my thoughts and making it impossible to focus. Vines! I managed to shout, thinking of the first thing that came to mind. The jungle dimension obliged, and enormous vines and other plant life sprouted from the platform all around me, covering my head and blocking most of the hail from striking me. Some chunks got through, though, but they were smaller and didn't hurt quite as badly when they pelted the top of my skull. Where the fuck is Xavier? I asked myself. That guy always disappears when I need him the most. He's worse than Gandalf. Now that I was distracted, the dark wizard was focused on Bruca. He began to levitate toward her, effortlessly closing the distance between them and grabbing her wand. It melded into his own staff, making it even larger than before. He now held the biggest piece of the all-world tree that had ever existed, aside from the actual tree itself. With his near-infinite power, he lifted Bruca from the ground with just a thought. He held her up in the air in front of him, as if trying to decide what to do with her. "Where are you, Xavier? I need your help," I called out, causing the dark wizard to smile even wider. "Don't you get it?" he mocked in a cackling voice. "The so-called guardian of the universe is a coward. He ran away the moment he saw what was happening. Ran away like he always does. That is the only reason he's lived so long. For half a millennia he's been running from my power, living in squalor and despair in that disgusting hovel, trying and failing to raise apprentice after apprentice, each one more useless than the last. With such dwindling power, as he gives it all away, piece by piece, only for me to gobble it all up for myself. And now, finally, after all these years, it does not matter where he runs anymore. It will all be empty soon. It will all be dark and empty. And I will decide what rises from the ashes." As the Dark Wizard was giving the most long-winded bad guy speech I'd ever heard, I felt a weight settle around my neck. It was strange, disconcerting at first. I thought it was the Dark Wizard casting a Darth Vader spell on me. But then my hand reached up and I felt something hanging from a chain around my neck. The key. It had been so long, I had almost forgotten of its existence. Xavier had told me that one day, I would be entrusted with its power. And it seemed that day was today. All at once, it came to me. The puzzle pieces fit together so perfectly. And I realized I had a plan. And somehow, I knew it would work. If there was such a thing as fate, this was mine. You could turn it all into darkness and abyss. Sure. But there is one thing that will remain standing. And you have no power over it. None. His smile faltered as I held up the key. The all-world tree cannot be destroyed. And it is full of light. I've seen it myself. He thought about this for a second, and then his horrible smile returned. My heart sank as I momentarily faltered, wondering if I'd been wrong about everything. But then he spoke again. "I suppose I'll just have to destroy it then, won't I?" he said, grabbing Bruca's arm and creating a portal. I followed suit, and opened a portal back to Earth using my wand. With a look back over my shoulder at Bruca, being carried by the Dark Wizard, I stepped through the gate. When I emerged, I was back in the forest near my house, right where I'd met Bruca and Xavier for the first time. The woods were quiet, dark, and empty. Not even the birds were singing in the trees, as if they knew something terrible was coming. And as the Dark Wizard emerged from a nearby portal, I ran. I ran as fast and hard as my legs would carry me. I ran towards the all-world tree, knowing that it was my very last hope. The Dark Wizard had the biggest staff which had ever been created, using pieces of the tree. But that was only a fraction of the power which belonged to the all-world tree. It contained so much strength and energy that it was thrumming with it, reflecting an aura that could be seen clearly by those who possessed magic. He seemed to realize what I was doing as I was about to reach the tree, and threw Bruca to the forest floor. She screamed in pain, momentarily distracting me, and I looked back to see her clutching her forearm, as if it had been broken with the fall. My distraction caused me to trip, and I stumbled to the ground, falling flat on my face. So close, and yet so far. The dark wizard laughed, and cast a bolt of dark lightning in my direction. It struck me in the chest, center mass. I looked down to see a hole in my midsection, through which I could observe the grass and dry leaves. There wasn't any blood, just a clean wound with edges burnt black and cauterized. A second later, he was standing over me, looking down at me and shaking his head. So disappointing. I was really hoping for a fight. A legendary battle. Something I could tell my great-grandchildren about as they prepare themselves to rule over my new multiverse. He sniffed, looking around absently. A shame. I suppose I'll just have to. He stopped, and I saw his brow knit into confusion. What is this? No. No, 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 no! That's impossible! I should have realized something was up, when I was still able to move and think with a basketball-sized hole in my chest. But when you're in the heat of the moment, you don't really consider these things. Looking down, I saw my organs being stitched back together by some miraculous force. Like the world's most powerful 3D printer, my lungs and liver became whole again. And then my heart was there, amidst a bundle of veins and arteries stitching themselves back together. The black, crusted charcoal which had been the wound edges began to flake away, revealing fresh, clean muscle underneath. Whoa, I managed to say, and felt my hand touching something rough which bulged from the ground. A root. A root from the all-world tree. As my body became whole again, I got up on one knee, careful not to remove my hand from the tree's root. And then I looked up at the dark wizard, and I could see the fear in his eyes as the power of the multiverse blazed in my own gaze. I wanted to take him out right then and there. I tried to channel that energy into a deadly bolt of lightning, and I lifted a finger gun at him to do just that. But nothing happened. I closed my hand into a fist and tried again. Still nothing. The dark wizard seemed to realize that something was off. He seized on the opportunity and began to back away. Just like your mentor, he laughed. So foolish. You don't even know how to use your own power. I hated him so much in that moment. I could feel the power coursing through me. I could feel that I was able to do something in that moment to stop him. And yet the finger guns did nothing. Vines! I yelled, needing to stop him somehow. I wanted this man dead so badly. And yet now, of all times, the multiverse was denying me its power. Nothing happened, yet again. I looked down at the ground, at the root just beneath me, wondering what the hell it wanted me to do. What did the multiverse want from me? Hadn't I done everything right? Hadn't I figured out this puzzle, laid out before me in a million disjointed pieces? Or was I still missing something? Suddenly, I felt a warm hand grab mine. I looked over to see Bruke, holding my hand tightly in her grasp. She was smiling at me, looking at me kindly with those bright purple eyes of hers. Even through all the pain of her broken wrist, she was smiling. What the hell? She muttered, looking down at her forearm. It was bending back to its correct shape. It was healing itself. Or, rather, the multiverse was healing it, using me as a conduit. Suddenly, Baruka's eyes lit up. That's it. What? What's it? My dad told me something once. back when I was training with him in the early days. He said that the multiverse is like a rainbow. Each universe its own color. But everything combines to make black or white. Like a prism, or like mixing paints. You combine them all, and that's what you get. I thought about this for a few long moments. How can they be black and white at the same time? Those are opposites. Anything that causes pain and suffering is on the dark spectrum. Anything that heals is on the light. So what does that mean? I asked, seeing the dark wizard opening a portal and wondering how the hell I was going to stop him. How do I explain this? The tree is full of light, right? I nodded. So, it doesn't wound people. It only does good. Everything else we've been doing has been a perversion of that power. We hacked off the limbs of the tree, thinking we were saving the universe with them. But really, we've just been giving him more power. That's why the Abyss is thriving right now. We need to restore the tree back to the way it was, before Xavier and all those other sorcerers try to use it for their own gain. This really stunned me, and for a second I wondered if she was trying to trick me again somehow. But then I looked into her eyes, and saw the honesty and vulnerability there. But how are we supposed to protect it if we don't have magic? The tree can protect itself, just like it did for billions of years, before people came along and tried to interfere. Trust me, I've studied both sides of this. I'm the only one who has. And it just clicked for me. It all just made sense. We have to get that staff back from him. And we have to somehow return it to the tree. It's the only way to heal the multiverse. To make it whole again. Okay. Assuming you're right about this, how am I going to do that? My powers aren't working. That's because you're trying to use it to kill the Dark Wizard. The tree doesn't wound people, remember? Shit, I realized. She was right. Sand, I called out, making one last-ditch effort to stop the Dark Wizard as he was stepping through the portal. He'd gotten his robe stuck on a shrub. I guess that's why he was taking so long to leave. A hole in the sky opened up just above the man, and sand began to pour down on him. It looked as if someone had opened a sewer grate in the fabric of reality, leading to a dimension full of the stuff. And I realized that was essentially what I had done. The portal the Dark Wizard had created disappeared, as he lost his concentration and began to drift over toward us on a moving sand dune. Sand hand, I said, picturing a giant hand grabbing his staff. Just as I had imagined it, it happened. The staff was snatched out of his hands and landed in my grasp a second later. Shit, the Dark Wizard said, and I cracked him over the head with it, as hard as I could. His eyes rolled back to the whites, and he fell over, unconscious. Bruca looked at me, surprised. What? He was gonna kill like billions of people. He deserved it. She thought about this for a few seconds. Try trillions. Actually, quintillions of quintillions. So, yeah, I guess bonking him on the head was alright. The two of us turned around to face the tree, looking up at it together. I took Bruca's hand in mine, and the two of us stepped forward to finally finish it all. Are you ready to do this? Bruca asked, gripping my hand tightly in hers. Once we do, there's no going back. I thought about it for a while, and then nodded. Yeah, it feels right. I don't know how I know, but it does. She nodded back at me. Okay, you have the wand? I had forgotten about it in the pockets of my robes, but quickly pulled it out and held it up against the larger staff. It melded into the larger piece of wood, disappearing and causing the entire object to increase in size. Man, that always freaks me out. Me too. Well, at least it's gonna be the last time we have to see it. it's gonna be the last time we have to deal with any of this. That thought brought me a pang of sadness. This had been a hell of an adventure. It was kind of disappointing that it was all gonna be over soon. All this time, I had been planning to become the guardian of the multiverse, to take over after Xavier was gone. But now, everything was gonna be different. I was gonna go back to being a teenager again, going back to school and trying to make friends. Holy shit. I had missed so much school, I realized. Like, so much. You have no idea. But it was for the best. A normal life sounded great right about now. I couldn't wait for that. Hey, I just thought of something, I said. If you don't have magic anymore, would you, age super fast like those witches in Stardust? Because that would really suck. Xavier said you're 100 years old or something? Nah, I'll just start to age from where I left off. Which is about the same as you. Oh. So you mean we'd be in the same grade? We could go to the same school and be, together? I wasn't sure how to properly finish the sentence, but I had a feeling she knew what I was getting at. She blushed at the suggestion. Yeah, I'd like that. Something else occurred to me then. Your dad said something about how you made a deal with a demon from another dimension, and that's how you became super evil. Is that all true? She shook her head. He would have said anything to get you to break up with me. And you did, by the way. I still haven't forgiven you for that. She kissed me hard on the mouth, telling me otherwise, and settled back with a grin. Her berry lip gloss reminded me of, "Hey, give that back!" She stepped back suddenly with the key in her hand. Was this seriously all just a ruse for her to get it from me? After all this time, had she really not changed at all? Thankfully, she was just fucking with me. She winked at me and tossed it back. Gotcha. I had to mess with you again. At least once, for all time's sake. After a few stunned seconds, she nudged me forward with a cute little push. Go on, do it. You are the chosen one, after all, she said with a smile. I grabbed her hand, pulling her closer. You know, I think this time, it's actually the chosen two. And with that, I held up the staff, pressing it into the bark of the all-world tree's trunk. It began to absorb into it, reluctantly at first. And then, a moment later, you could no longer tell where one started and the other began. The two of us watched the tree for a few more seconds, and then our eyes found each other's again, and we embraced fiercely. After a few blessed seconds of wonderful silence, Xavier's voice began to scream from out of nowhere. You fools! You bloody incompetent fools! Don't you realize what you've just done? We stared at him in dumb silence for a few seconds before I managed to reply. We returned the tree to itself. It's whole again. That was the only way to stop him, Xavier. We had to do it. I'm sorry. Whole? You think it's whole? There are half a dozen other pieces of the all-world tree still scattered around the globe. Other sorcerers descended from those who lived in ancient days. Did you really think we were the only ones? Grupe looked shocked. You told me we were the only ones who had a piece of the tree. You said we were the only ones left to protect it. And you believed me? I lie all the time. I'm a terrible person. Oh, this is really bad. Truly awful. Those other sorcerers are not good people. That's why they weren't chosen to protect the tree. And the fact that they weren't chosen just made them more jaded. Most of them were lifelong criminals. Gangsters and thugs who use their power for evil and greedy purposes. Oh, heavens, boy. You really screwed the pooch this time. Yes, we are all almost certainly going to die. They'll sense the power vacuum and show up one by one to claim my place as rightful guardian of the tree. And then who knows what they might do with its power. And now I have no way to defend it. Nothing to stop them with. I begged you to care for the staff, to keep it safe, and you return it to the tree? How did you get such a terrible, stupid idea in your head? Bruca didn't hesitate. It was my idea. I'll take the blame, okay? He didn't know. Neither of us did. We thought it was the solution to all of this, but now I'm not so sure. If only there was some way to take it back, I said. We worked so hard, and now it's all for nothing. I wish I could just go back in time and... Suddenly the world flashed bright white all around us, causing me to blink my eyes shut. Bruca was still holding my hand, and when I opened my eyes and looked around, everything was different. I was holding the big staff in my hand again, ready to reintegrate it into the tree, and Xavier was gone. What the hell? I said, pulling it back. Did we just travel back in time? Bruca finished. Yeah, I think we did. But how? The Dark Wizard was unconscious on the ground still as we spoke, but I saw him beginning to stir now. He was starting to wake up after I'd bonked him on the head earlier. The tree contains the entire multiverse inside of it. Space and time. I think they're both aspects of the same thing, if I remember my science lessons correctly. I might be misremembering, because that was like 90 years ago. No, that sounds right. That makes sense. The tree saw we made a mistake, and it sent us back to fix it. We both stared up at the all-world tree, trying to decipher what it wanted from us. What do we do? I asked after a few moments. What do you want from us? Who knew how many chances we would get at this? There might have only been one mulligan. We needed to get it right this time. The road less traveled is less traveled for a reason, said the Dark Wizard's voice from behind us. Don't you remember what I told you both? So long ago now. You're both taking the easy road. The way to a better future is simple. We must start over. The tree knows this as well as I do. We must bring this realm of existence to an end. To start over. Fresh and new. It is the only way. I thought back to the other Bruca I had met, in the other multiverse. The one who had succeeded in her plans to blow it all up. She wasn't happy either. She had actually told me I needed to stop it from happening, since our multiverse was keeping hers supplied with cats, which she was unable to reproduce in her world. Suddenly, I had an idea, and something told me, this time, it was the right idea. Now that we had all the information to make an informed decision, we could do what needed to be done. I can't, I said. I think you're right. I can't do it myself. I just can't bring myself to destroy the all-world tree. You do it. Jordan, no! Bruca yelled, but I didn't listen. I handed the staff to the Dark Wizard. Then I tossed him the golden key, which hung around my neck. Bruca gasped, looking at me as if I had just betrayed her, but I dropped her a sly wink, and her expression softened a little. The Dark Wizard looked just as surprised, but after a few seconds of composing himself, he put the key around his own neck, held up the staff, and pointed it towards the tree. I knew you would come around, he said, laughing. Smart boy. Very smart. You can see as well as I can that this realm is on its last legs. But the three of us will start everything anew. A triumvirate of power.
ruling over the new multiverse.
A black ball of energy began to grow around the tip of his staff, swirling and building in size and strength. It expanded larger and larger until it enveloped the tree. We stepped back and watched as the sphere grew even bigger, encompassing the Dark Wizard.
Benedicti, Baraka, Mustafa, Barblanc, Rastafarian, Nunchaku, Esteban!
The Dark Wizard's incantation sounded like a mixture of random words, but there did seem to be some power in them. As if spoken together, they were stronger than if spoken alone. "What are you doing?" Bruca whispered. "I thought we were trying to stop him." "We don't have to," I said. "He's not the chosen one. Or chosen two, I guess I should say. He doesn't have the power," she uttered. "He thinks he does, but he's not strong enough without us." "Exactly. And what happens when a lightweight tries to take on a heavyweight?" She smiled. "He gets knocked the fuck out." At that instant, a ball of dark energy imploded, a shockwave of white light erupting from within it. It grew in size and strength, exploding outwards from the tree, and causing all nearby plant life to be blown backwards, as if by a nuclear blast.
What? What is this? What's happening to me?
The Dark Wizard howled, and I saw his robe being incinerated, revealing his horrifying visage. He spun around to scowl at us, and as he did, the skin around his face began to flake and peel away, like dry paint. Still, he didn't die. The dark power inside of him kept him alive through it all, as his skin was torn away, revealing muscle and then bone beneath that, until he was nothing but a skeleton filled with dark energy, his eyes still boring into mine, his horrible grin still somehow fixed on his face. But then I remembered that all skeletons look like they're smiling, and he probably wasn't actually too thrilled with this situation.
I will get you. I will find my way back to this plane of existence, and I will kill the both of you. I will be the one to take this multiverse from the tree and give it to him.
I gripped Bruca's hand even tighter and looked over at her. Who does he keep talking about? Who is this him guy? I don't really know. Something from the prophecies, I guess? Some dark, horrible, satanic antichrist figure, I'm assuming. Oh. Yeah, I was never really into that part so much. I was just gonna kick him to the curb and do my own thing at a certain point. You know, after you and Xavier were dead. But I guess you figured that one out already. Yeah, the other Bruca told me all about it. But, you know, she didn't look too happy with her decisions. I think she regretted it. Bruca nodded. I can see why. After you described the place to me, it doesn't sound very nice. Well, at least she's got those cats to keep her company. Yeah, thanks to us. The Dark Wizard was still screaming and melting, looking at us incredulously.
Are you two reminiscing right now? What the fuck? I'm dying over here.
And with that, the bright white light finally turned his bones to ash, and they scattered on the wind. The key and the staff fell to the forest floor, and the two of us walked over to pick them up. I took the staff, and Bruca grabbed the key. She put it around her neck, and I didn't try to stop her this time. It was her birthright, after all. Her inheritance, from a father who should have tried a lot harder.
You did it!
Xavier's voice came from behind me, just as I was thinking of him.
I would have never thought of that, I must be honest.
We both turned around to see the old sorcerer standing before us, with tears in his eyes.
I am so proud of both of you,
he said, pulling the two of us into a bear hug.
You're both going to make such excellent guardians.
After a long embrace, we stood back, And I looked at him with a crooked smile. Xavier? I thought there could only be one guardian. Isn't that what you always said? He tried to smile, but faltered.
Forget everything I ever taught you, Jordan. You are a finer sorcerer than I could ever have hoped to be.
He turned to look at Bruca.
And you, my daughter, Bruca. How can I ever make it up to you? For all that I've done wrong. I've been a terrible teacher. And an even worse father. I let your mother... No, never mind that. What I mean to say is that you deserved so much better. And I only wish I could go back in time to correct everything I did wrong.
Bright white light flashed suddenly, and he was gone. Xavier, who had been standing in front of us a second before, was nowhere to be seen. I looked down and noticed there was a root of the all-world tree poking up out of the ground where he had been standing. Oh, shit. I think Xavier just pulled a Marty McFly, I said, pointing at the root. A Marty McWho? Bruca asked. I raised my eyebrows, looking at her with deep concern. Wait, you haven't seen Back to the Future? Okay, we're gonna watch it right now. Do you have Netflix at your place? Wait, maybe we'll have to rent it. Either way, great movies. Movies? As in plural? How many of these things do I have to watch? You're gonna love them. There's this crazy, wild-eyed scientist type who converts a DeLorean into a time machine. Guy kind of reminds me of somebody, actually. I don't know who, but he seems super familiar. Can't we just watch Rick and Morty? There's time travel in that, too. And multiverse stuff. It's right up your alley. Okay, one Back to the Future movie, then I promise we'll watch Rick and Morty. The two of us walked away from the all-world tree holding hands, still chatting about movies and TV. Xavier was gone, sent back in time somewhere. But that was okay. We could figure that out another day. For now, the two of us were just going to be kids again. Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupeHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow. And see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.